Coming up in today's Ideaspace podcast.
So they made an offer to buy us, which we negotiated. I negotiated quite meaningfully. It would have made me quite rich on day one, but with awful earnouts in hindsight that I never would have hit. If you've got an idea for a business, you've got an idea for something, just do it, just start it, do something. And then in 3 months, once you've got some data and you've got some information, you've got some feedback, use that to make a plan. But if you start off with a plan, it will be rubbish.
Welcome to the Ideaspace podcast. I'm Ben Hartley, head of Ideaspace. Ideaspace is a community of entrepreneurs, founders and their teams, many of them working alongside each other in one of our 3 offices based in and around Cambridge. Our members share knowledge, experience and expertise to help themselves and others in their high-impact venture creation. This week we're talking to Guy Blaskey, founder of Pooch Mutt, one of the fastest growing healthy pet food companies in the UK. Guy is also a consultant, mentor and public speaker, and he regularly posts useful and insightful articles at guyblaskey.com. Guy's talk is a warts and all look at how the company was founded, how it muscled its way onto the shelves of major high street retailers, and how it went from riches to rags and back again, recently taking major investment from a large European pet food manufacturer. If you want to hear the real story behind the startup, then listen on. Please be aware that the viewpoints and opinions of the hosts and guests are their own and do not necessarily represent those of Ideaspace or the University of Cambridge.
So I started, as Ben said, in 2007, and I started the company slightly by accident, if I'm quite honest. I worked at marketing agencies for quite a while. I got to the point where I was running a design agency that I thought was quite successful. It turns out, the turnover of that design agency in a year is what we do in about 3 days at the moment. But at the time, I thought I was some kind of genius and was doing everything right, because I had literally no understanding of what I was doing wrong. And I'd like to say my journey is, I've always believed in kind of work smart, not hard. I don't really believe in hard work. I don't think that's the ultimate key, despite what a lot of people say. Resilience and learning are far more important. So kind of today is a little bit about sharing my journey, but also a bit about kind of sharing what I've learned along the way, hopefully, so that not everyone doesn't make the same mistakes as I have. And I also think the warts and all thing that Ben mentioned is what I'm aiming for. I shouldn't name who. I've been to talks by entrepreneurs before and heard their stories when I also know the reality behind the story, from investors and non-execs who've worked on it. And quite frankly, the bullshit that people speak is just incredible. The stories that people tell themselves. And also the stories that you hear, the valuation stories that you hear of what are never true, and you never hear the fine detail behind them. And it's like you always see, I thought it was a brilliant example. I tried to find this and put it in the talk and I couldn't find it anywhere, but the guy behind Mojave slippers, I don't know if anyone saw those, got this double page spread in the Times about how brilliant he was and how brilliant the company was. And I think about 4 weeks later, it went bust. And there was no coverage of him going bust, but all this coverage of what a brilliant guy he was. I think the WeWork saga's kind of changed that slightly. We're seeing the other side of, what the bullshit is, but here's my warts and all view. So back to me. I was working in marketing. I was quite frankly quite arrogant, and I thought that I was adding a lot more value to my clients than I was getting out of it, which to a degree was true and to a degree wasn't true. It turns out that you have to understand things like production and logistics and cash flow to run a company, not just marketing. But at the time, I thought it was just marketing. I started the company. Before starting the company, I worked at some marketing agencies, some design agencies, and then I read an article about the guy who founded Red Bull, who was a marketing person. And he was kind of like, wow, I'm so good at marketing. I just need to find the right product, then I will be able to build a business out of it, which he's done to the tune of 7 billion and has done very well. But the article rang a bell with me, and I thought I could do that too, maybe not to the same extent. I just needed to find the right product. And at the time, my mum has a horse health supplement company called Blue Chip, and we had a dog who had hip dysplasia, and we treated the dog with the joint supplement for horses, and it worked really well. So my view was, let's just try it. We don't want to be selling 20 kilo bags to dogs, but we can make it in a smaller pack, reformulate it, and that's what we did. And started off selling a little bit, got into a couple of stores, started selling online, and this was kind of back in 2008, before kind of anyone was selling online. And I was going down to the post office every day with a big blue IKEA bag full of packages that I'd taped up and was sending out. And I thought it was quite successful, and I was doing everything quite well. I mean, I didn't manage to take any money out of the company, and I didn't manage to pay my mortgage, but I was also making some TV ads and doing some consultancy on the side that did everything else, but spending all of my time doing this. And even back then, I was talking to potential, this is before the days of crowdfunding or anything else, but I was talking to potential investors and seeing where I should take and what I should do. One of whom said to me, I hope this isn't your only source of income, because you wouldn't be able to afford a shirt on your back. Which, hit a nerve, but he was right. But I trundled along with it being a bit of a side project for about 4 or 5 years, and then applied for a government program, which is called I can't remember. Anyway, government program, which was to help businesses grow. And I got £3,000 worth of coaching for free from the government, which was pretty good at the time. And it was the first point that, and most of the coaching revolves around a thing called an orbit template, which, if people do not know what an orbit template is, I highly suggest that you look at. It's the simplest, quickest, and probably most effective way to make a business plan, or actually to make a plan for anything you want to do in life. And that introduced me to the concept, which sounds ridiculous, of knowing where you're heading. There's a Seneca quote which says, if you do not know to which port you are sailing, no wind is favorable. And it's very true, and it's kind of something that I live by. And interestingly, at the same time as this, I was training for the London Marathon, following a bet with someone in a pub that I probably shouldn't have made, but ended up kind of changing my life. And I've done a whole talk on this, which is the similarities between the two, which people don't get. And the similarities are that no one, very few people, but let's say no one, wakes up and thinks, I can run a marathon, or I'm going to run a marathon tomorrow, or I can run 26 miles tomorrow. No one who's not done any training thinks that. When you do a marathon, you work out what your end date is. So you've got a date in mind. You know what the target is, just 26.2 miles. And then you work backwards from it. So you make a plan that builds up to that date. You build up your running volume, your speed, your training towards that date. So you know that you don't go into it thinking, I've got to run 26 miles. You think, I've got to run 4 miles in the next 4 weeks. I've got to run 8 miles 4 weeks after that. I've got to run 10 miles 4 weeks after that. And you have a plan and you strategically build up to it. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't take the same approach to their business, and they should do, which is effectively working out what a goal is, working out the time on that goal, whether that's a turnover goal by a certain time, and that breaking that down month by month by month into small achievable goals on the way. And a marathon plan and a business plan are exactly the same in that format, that you have to be looking at, what do we need to achieve in the next 3 months, 6 months, year, 3 years, 5 years, as opposed to be going, we want to be a £100 million company in 5 years. People think that they can do the end result without working out the steps along the way. So that was a game-changing thing for me. It totally changed my approach to everything, and is to this day is how we plan everything. Within that, I realized that I needed to move from kind of health supplements where we were to a more mass market product. So I decided that we wanted to launch treats with kind of treats with supplements built in, healthy treats, which there are loads of now, but at the time we were the first people to do it. The way that I did this was I got a meeting with Waitrose and I got a meeting with Pets at Home. And what I took to that meeting was a tube of Haribo sweets with the Haribo emptied out, somebody else's dog treats poured in, and an A4 bit of paper that I designed myself, which subsequently won two international design awards, I will add, sellotaped round the edge. And I took those and got listings in, our first supermarket listing in Waitrose and a major listing in Pets at Home. And that Pets at Home account is kind of multi-millions now based on that initial meeting. And it was quite, in hindsight, it was quite daring to do that, but we still kind of take that approach to what in tech terms is called an MVP, or a minimum viable product, but just taking something that looks real to somebody and saying, this is something like what you're going to get. Too many people wait to get something perfect. We kind of go by the phrases like the perfect is the enemy of the good. And it's, or done is better than perfect. We like to get stuff done. If it's 80% good enough, it's 80% good enough and it goes ahead. That's much better than waiting for something to be 100% good. I also, when I'm working with mentoring kind of younger entrepreneurs, I quite often tell them not to make a plan. And there's a great phrase, which is to make a plan, which is, if you've got an idea for a business, you've got an idea for something, just do it, just start it, do something. And then in 3 months, once you've got some data and you've got some information, you've got some feedback, use that to make a plan. But if you start off with a plan, it will be rubbish and pointless. I'm a very much a believer in kind of doing stuff. So on that approach, we got a listing in Waitrose, and as we walked out the door, the buyer said to us something along the lines of, just send us over your promo plan and your discountings. And I nodded and walked out the door and phoned my friend who runs a Popcorn, which was then a popcorn company. And I was like, what does this mean? How do I do this? And he was like, yeah, we do that. And then I ended up I was reading a book on how to deal with supermarkets, and it said, if you've got any questions about this, phone Charlotte, who ran a dips company. And I phoned Charlotte. I phoned the number for Charlotte's company. She answered the phone, which surprised me straight away. And she said to me, oh, I'm not the right person to talk to on this. You want to talk to my boyfriend, who's now a husband, who is the founder of Goo Desserts, James, who's the founder of Goo Desserts, which was lucky. And also to somebody else that she worked with called Phil, who's ex-M&S and ex-Hovis. And then we got Phil and James came in once a month and basically taught us how to work with supermarkets, how to do promotional plans, how our discounting works, how our pricing works, how supermarkets make money, which you would think they make money by selling your products. Turns out they don't. They tend to, depending on the supermarket, Ocado makes a lot more money selling you advertising space. Amazon makes more money selling you advertising space. Amazon is interesting because it's more of a cash flow business than anything else. They hold 90 days worth of our money at any one time, which they get to reinvest, which is a whole post on my blog site if anybody wants to look at it. But learning how the different companies that you're working with make money, and more importantly, learning what the goals of our buyers were. And this was a bit of a revelation to us. I mean, we sat with, in supermarkets, you deal with something called rates of sale, and that's how many units per store per week you sell of something. In a very early meeting we had with Waitrose, she said to me, well, your rate of sale is half this product's rate of sale. That's bad. And I said, but our price is twice theirs and you make more margin, so surely that's good. And she went, no, I'm being judged by rate of sale by my boss. It doesn't matter how much money we make. And I went, what? So if I make you a product that costs £1 that we'll sell loads of, but you won't make any money on, that would be a success. And she's like, yeah. Which surprised me, but we did it. She didn't make that much money. We didn't make that much money, but it was great for the brand and kept her happy. And it made her look good to her boss. And because we could be flexible and do something that made her look good to her boss, she wanted to work with us more. And that just came about by asking the right questions and kind of going into things a bit naively and not assuming that, you know, Waitrose would want to make money selling stuff, which you'd think they would. It's all very odd, but it was all about kind of learning what was going on. We went from there. We quickly kind of, when we were just doing supplements, we were turning over about 150,000 a year, which is very little, but at the time I thought I was Elon Musk. And then we started, as we started launching treats and started dealing with bigger players, our turnover grew and grew. We bought in dry dog food. We got that listed in a few places. Equally, we've had a few fallouts on the way with different customers that delayed different things. That's a whole big story. And then in about 2016, we were about £1 million turnover, at which point I definitely thought I was kind of Bill Gates or Elon Musk, because, or Dr. Evil with a whole 1 billion. But thought that was a massive success. And at which point we were also approached in a very weird roundabout way. I got introduced to somebody who was looking to buy a dog food company, who his family is the Weetabix family. So you can imagine that they have quite a bit of cash. When I spoke to him, he said, I really want to buy a dog food company. I want to spend about 100 million. To which I said, you're welcome to. I don't think it's good. And he's like, no, not you. But he wanted to buy another dog food company, but he wanted to get them to buy us first and us kind of to be a Trojan horse, which was quite a good approach by him, I thought. So they made an offer to buy us, which we negotiated. I negotiated quite meaningfully. It would have made me quite rich on day one, but with awful earnouts in hindsight that I never would have hit. I now know, but I thought I would at the time. We went through a whole process with them, and the day before it was due to close, they pulled out of the process. And that happened. A few things happened at that point. This happens quite a bit, but this is the first time it happened to me. So the first thing that happens is, if you're selling equity in your company, your lawyers are working for you because you are selling your property. Your lawyers are not working for the company, which effectively means you get lumped with a bill, which for me was about 50 grand of personal legal fees, not company legal fees, that you are expected to pay. Secondly, once you've done a due diligence process, as we were doing with them, we built a plan for us to kind of integrate with them and work with them and how we were going to grow with that company. That plan obviously became null and void, and I had no plan and, quite frankly, no energy to create a plan. And the third one is the plans, that things that are already underway. So, we agreed, I can show you actually, because I'm in the office. We've got agreed to launch these lovely tins, which were very expensive, into Tesco, and we needed £250,000 cash to fund it, to fund the cash flow to do it, which they were supposed to be providing, and they didn't. And as they pulled out, they said, oh, you're welcome to come and have a chat with us about all our reasoning and everything else. And my answer was, if you're going to give me 250 grand, I'll come and talk to you. If you're not, I'm not interested. And then I kind of had to go into panic mode and find 250 grand quite quickly, which was fun. So that was a horrible experience. At the same time as that happening, I was unknowingly taken to court in Italy by our packaging manufacturer had subcontracted the manufacture of our packaging to a company in Italy. The product was substandard, so we had agreed with our UK company that we weren't paying for it. But this hadn't been translated over to the Italian company, and the guy at the UK company had since gone, and they took us to court. And I had a 6-month-old baby and had, as a result of the court case, which I lost because I never went to it in Italy, I had bailiffs coming to my door of my house, and they forced their way into my house. And because they saw mail addressed to my company at my house, they said that means all assets in the house could be reasonably considered assets of the company. And we're literally taking my wife's computer, taking the TV off the wall. My wife's in the garden holding a screaming 6-month-old. While I'm on to, I had some correspondence, so I was on to lawyers and I had everything happening, but it was 8 o'clock in the morning and no one in Italy was awake, which was fucking horrible, to be honest. But that's the warts and all version and what really happens. Eventually we got it sorted out, and eventually the bailiffs apologized and said, and they even said to me, look, everyone says it shouldn't be happening, everyone says it's all sorted out. We've never actually had a case where it was actually sorted out and it was all done and it was just a paperwork error. But that's kind of the truth of what happens and how unpleasant things can get when everything's kind of on you. After that experience and the kind of failed investment experience, I knew I needed to make a plan, and I knew I didn't have the energy to make a plan myself. So I signed up for something called the Business Growth Program at Cranfield University, Cranfield Business School. I don't know that I should be promoting other people's courses, but I will do anyway. A few people had recommended the Business Growth Program. It's designed for people from kind of 2 to 20 million turnover, and it's very cleverly targeted at kind of entrepreneurs who have got to where they've got to through kind of nous and intelligence, but don't know how to do things properly, and they kind of teach you how to do things properly. And it's a 3-month course that you go kind of every other weekend, and you make your business plan in that course, but you're kind of doing it properly. And it's one of the best things that I've ever done. It's the best kind of, I think it's £12,000, which I was really worried about at the time, but it's easily the best £12,000 I've ever spent. I had a slightly different experience than some people because there's lots of different kind of modules on it. So, I was in the marketing ones going, I've written chapters of books on this, I've done talks on this, I've been published on this. Although there was equally the realization that I know all of this, but how much am I actually implementing it and how much am I teaching my team to do this properly? But equally, there's lectures, like I went into a cash flow lecture thinking that I understood cash flow, and about 20 minutes in was like, oh my God, does everyone else know that this is how this works? This is amazing. And that one lecture, and I've told Andy, the lecturer, of this, that one lecture changed my life, changed my business, formed the structure that I have used for my buyout deal, just by purely understanding kind of the right levers to pull and how to pull them. And I do think that cash flow, again, I've done a blog on this at guyblaskey.com. I do think cash flow is one of those things that everyone thinks they understand, but they don't really understand as much as they could do, and how powerful it is. So I came out with a business growth program. I had a good plan, which was great. It was very focused. It was very focused on things like we developed 3 very clear pillars of who we're going to sell to. So we sell to big stores, big chain stores. So Waitrose, Sainsbury's, Pets at Home. We sell to online direct, and we sell to online retailers like Amazon. And that's the core of our business. And what I had to drill this into people quite hard, and people didn't get it. We won't sell to kind of independent pet shops, so we don't put a lot of focus on independent pet shops because they're a pain, they don't make a lot of money. Everyone talks to us about export, and I have to drill this in, and no one understands it at first, and hopefully you will, because it's very simple. But in my view, export doesn't exist, because within the 3 pillars, they're either a big, casino in France is the same as Tesco in the UK. it's a multiple store with lots of stores. Amazon.fr and Amazon.de and Ocado are all the same. They're online retailers. So you put them in the same way. The geography of where they are makes no sense. And it's really important in terms of developing a team of what the team is working on, because a team that works on export doesn't make sense. Whereas a team that works on supermarkets, whether that's a supermarket in the UK, a supermarket in Germany, or a supermarket in France, it's the same skill set. The language is irrelevant. So that became a big part of the plan of how we worked. The cash flow bit, working closely with our suppliers and finding the right suppliers that not necessarily gave us the best price, but gave us the best payment terms, that were willing to work with us the closest, became very important. We then came out of that, and I started looking to raise money. I went to VCTs. Now, VCTs, venture capital trusts, are probably the biggest untapped financing resource in the country. They're flooded with money. They don't know what to do with it. They have the same rules as EIS, and we weren't EIS eligible because we were over 7 years. But there is an exception if you're entering into a new market. So we said we were looking to launch our cat food and looking to get funding to launch the cat food, which met every single one of HMRC's categories for a new market. So we went to HMRC and said, please give us our approval for this. I'd been offered £2 million at, I think, an 8 times turnover valuation at the time. And I was quite happy with that. That was a good valuation. We worked with them, we made a plan, everything was ready to go. We just had to wait for HMRC's approval. After 6 months of waiting, HMRC came back and said, this isn't a new market. Cat food and dog food are the same thing. And we said, no, they're not. We've given you all the proof. We meet all your criteria. And they said, well, we can't change our mind because this is only advisory. But even though you meet our criteria, we don't think you meet the spirit of the regulations, which I then argued. And every time you contact them, you've got to wait a month to hear back. And then when they came back to me, they said, well, the only thing that you can do is make the investment go ahead, and then you can challenge the status of it after you've got the investment. But the investor isn't allowed to go ahead unless that they've got the approval, first of all. So that, again, was another 8 months wasted. A good lesson, though, that someone said to me, you should always raise money when you don't need to raise money. So always be looking out and always plan as though it's not going to happen. And we constantly, through the whole story, we always have planned, and even to the last round of investment, we've always had a plan of how the business succeeds without having any investment, without having external help, knowing that what we would do if and when it comes in. So after that 8 months of waste, I made 2 kind of very important changes. One is building up the team. And this was something that happened a lot after the Cranfield experience, which I spent too long with people doing what I told them to do, where I was a boss and I had people doing the job and doing what I asked them to. And I moved from that to hiring people that were better at me in their fields, which is hard to do, but pays off. And the best investment that you make is the investment in the people that you bring into the company. And everyone, I have a management team of 4 now, and I can do all of their jobs really, really, really badly. So I can do them to the extent that I understand them and can work with them on them, but they all do their individual jobs far better than me. But they also can't do each other's jobs, which helps them work together. So I bought in a management team. And additionally bought in a non-exec who we still haven't paid 3 years later, but we owe him lots of money. We bought in a very experienced non-exec, and he is the guy. He was originally at Covent Garden Soup and took Covent Garden Soup public. Him and 3 others bought Green and Blacks when it was 2 million turnover, and they sold it at 40 million turnover. They bought Corsten Press, he's chairman of Vivo Barefoot, and he basically showed us, from a finance background as an FD, showed us how to do our reporting and set up our management structure. and got to the point where actually I was being quite far removed from it, and he was telling the management team what to do. So we hired experienced people in the management team from big companies. And for example, he was asking the finance guy to structure a P&L a certain way, and I took myself out of it to make sure that nothing got lost in translation and everything was done properly. Equally, he asked the marketing team to provide MAT charts, and I was there going, what the hell is an MAT chart? And because they were all trained by Unilever, they were like, don't worry, we know, we'll sort that out, it's easy. So I was kind of learning along with them. And as Nick, our non-exec, said, the same with cash flow. Everyone thinks they understand reporting and understand financial reporting, and they don't. Unless it's done properly, they don't. He gave us a really good structure that they used at Corsten and Green and Blacks and Whole Earth and elsewhere, which has two really good benefits to it. One is I see lots of what I think are kind of entrepreneur cons out there of different ways to have an operating system or an EOS for your business. Nick's view, which is right, is that publicly listed companies all work the same way, and so do all large corporations. They all work and report in the same way. And if you want to get bought by one of those companies, you have to report exactly how they report. So ignore all these charlatans that are trying to sell you on special ways to run your company. Everyone runs a company with a P&L looking exactly the same. Everyone has a budget. Everyone reports against a budget. Everyone does it the same way. And I've been running a company for 7 years. We'd never really done a budget properly. We'd had a budget, but we'd never done it properly. Now we kind of live and die by it. We changed our accounting to something called 445 accounting, which I'd never heard of at the time. It's very simple that instead of having months, you have periods, which are 4 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 4 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks. What that means is that adds up for 52 weeks. So you have a year of 52 weeks, which you should, but it's broken up in 2 weeks. And then you can have a management meeting on a weekly basis, and you can have weekly figures, and you can budget on a weekly basis, and you can report on a weekly basis. So we have a management meeting every Tuesday. Everyone brings figures to it. We bring sales figures. We do a full P&L based on a predictive model. Every week we look at a full P&L, and we look at it by week. We look at it by period to date, month to date, period to date, and we look at it year to date. And by going through that process every single week, and people have sat in our meetings going, "This is too detailed. You don't need to do this every week." But the conversations that flow for it and the knowledge that you have of your company from that is very clear. It helps you make decisions very quickly and spot problems very quickly and gets everybody working together. Our sales team and our e-com team also report on a weekly basis. They report down to free contribution, which free contribution, again, is something I had never heard of before Nick came in. A lot of people will talk about gross profit and net profit. Again, I'm not going to go into it. There's a blog on my site about what free contribution is and how you calculate it and how you should structure your P&L. But it's basically what you make with all the very fixed costs taken out and how you push everything. So we got lots of work together. We got really good at reporting. We report as well as any company 10 times our size. We've got growth going, again, growth in turnover, not necessarily profitability, but we are able to see what products we could analyze, what products weren't profitable and what products were profitable in what channels and what we needed to fix. And we went through a period of fixing the problems. We then took the company out for investment again. We went through a corporate finance house called Alantra. We were taken out to did the whole road show, met loads of people. In truth, met a load of people we shouldn't have met, where their investment mandate didn't match our model, which is a really important thing to watch out for and was a lot of wasted time. We got some quite shitty offers, I thought, that I wasn't very happy with, especially because I had such a good VCT offer before. And about 6 months of doing that and making very detailed plans and seeing everybody, I just wasn't happy with any of the offers. So I parted company with them after investing a lot of time and a lot of the team's time. I was then sitting in a talk on tax, and had the realization that a lot of our plan that we had made for investment involved selling in other countries, and that would be a new market, and that would be VCT eligible. So I then said that to the VCT fund who we were working with before. They went, yeah, cool, let's do it. Let's get some approval. Got it approved. I got it approved I think the Friday before lockdown hit, before the first lockdown hit. And the VCT came back and they said, right, we've got massive investments in cinema chains and restaurants, just hold off for a little bit, and then we'll go ahead. So I held off for a little bit, and then they came back and their valuation had tumbled from where it was 4 years ago, because they knew they were in kind of a good position of power. And we kind of played along with it, but I wasn't that happy with it. And the idea of expanding across Europe in a pandemic didn't seem like quite a lot of hard work, especially as we had a lot of problems. We just moved our packaging manufacturing to Northern Italy, as Northern Italy got hit with coronavirus. We were at the stage where we were calling people like Sainsbury's and going, look, these are the products you stock. This is what we've got in the warehouse. If you want it, tell me today, you can have it. If not, it goes to someone else. And then we were kind of running on fumes for a while. So the corona, and then there was all the disruption of the start of coronavirus. We got through it very well. We were very well set up. Our offline sales, so Waitrose, Pets at Home, etc., was down about 30%. Our online sales are up about 300%, and our Amazon sales are up about 100%. And everyone's buying puppies, so that works quite nicely for us. So that all went quite well. And then I had we actually had the Elantra, the corporate finance came back and had these random people that had come back and they now wanted to buy us, but it all seemed a bit fishy. And then our manufacturer, who I get on very well with, who we've worked very closely with, who provided us a lot of support, it's not finance, they called me up and said, our sales team wants to sell your product across Europe, but our owner doesn't want to do that unless he's got some skin in the game. So he wants to buy 15% of the company off you. My wife said, take his fucking money now. Which I would like to have done. And I said, that's really good. And I really want to do this, but we still need to finance the growth of the company, and you buying equity off me doesn't finance the growth of the company. We need a plan for that. So we came to a plan very quickly. We had a quick call. We agreed everything. This was kind of March, April, agreed everything. Everyone's very happy. And then it all went a bit quiet. And then I gave him a bit of space, and then it stayed a bit quiet. And I was like, he's going to get back to me soon. And then I got kind of a placeholder email saying, I'll get back to you in a bit, and then didn't hear anything. And that kind of went on for kind of 6 weeks, 8 weeks. Meanwhile, I'm trying to keep the VCT on the hook slightly so that if this doesn't work, they're still there as a backup. I don't hear anything. And then I finally, via LinkedIn, go to the guy's boss, who is the top of the company. He's the fourth richest person in the Czech Republic, the Czech billionaire who's on his yacht, who says, just please bear with me. We really want to do this, but he's got some personal issues. So he had some personal issues which took him out of the business, and that went on, and it got, so that was from March to about August. And we survived because we buy a lot of product from Europe that we don't pay VAT on, but we charge VAT on our sales. So we normally have to pay massive VAT bills, but because of coronavirus, Rishi put in a VAT holiday, and that saved us about 250 grand. And that is what kept us going for the whole of last year. And if it wasn't for that, we would have been in quite serious trouble. But it was enough to get us to hold on. And then it came back, and in kind of August, September, we agreed heads of terms. And it was very friendly heads of terms, and it was what we thought was a very easy deal between us. And we both got lawyers in, and we both sides briefed the lawyers saying, look, we've worked together for 3 years, we know each other, we've got a deal planned out, it's really easy, can we just get this done quickly and easily? That quickly and easily took us to mid-December, nearly Christmas. It took 3 months. I had, at the end of it, 5 60-page contracts that we had to sign. I think I had 80 grand's worth of legal fees. The other side probably had similar worth of legal fees. But we got there in the end. But it was a horrible process and there was a few big learnings, but one of the big learnings is that we made a plan, and we made a really good deal on the assumption that everything was going to work and that everything was going to work out well. And then lawyers get involved, and lawyers work out what isn't going to work well, and what happens in those situations. And more importantly, with the different contracts and the different terms of, well, that works with that contract and that works with that contract, but this bit in this contract can trigger that bit in that, which triggers something here, and then it all falls apart. Which is really, really, really painful. And to the point of me just saying, look, it's a 2-year deal. That's never going to happen. Like, how could that ever happen? Let's just sign it. So it's really unpleasant. But we got through it. And now we've been working together for 4 months. They've given us a load of money. We've got a deal where they buy me out over the next 3 years. And also they put in loan money over the next few years. And we're also working, they own lots of other companies that we're working really closely with, who all messaged me and kind of said, welcome to the family. And I think one of the really key things that, without showing the full details, if you looked at the top line valuation of the company that I'm kind of selling at, it's significantly lower than I could get elsewhere in terms for investment money. However, I'm getting money out, and money out is always better than money in, which is nice in terms of my quality of life. It's enabling me to buy a house, which is nice. And that's something that I personally value and something that I personally wanted. Equally, they're putting in, because they are taking ownership of the company in 2 years, they're putting in kind of £2 million worth of loans, which I'm getting effectively for free. There's no interest on the loans, or 1% interest on the loan. And there's no dilution in my shareholding. So even though the valuation is lower, I keep more of the shareholding, so the net proceeds become higher. And also they want to work with us. And I think this is the really key thing about investors and investment money in general is, if you go to a fund has a mandate, a fund has a timeline. They want to sell their equity in your company at a profit within 3 years, because that's what they have to do to keep their investors happy. And if you're on board with that, that's fine. But with these guys, they didn't even look at a plan. They worked with us for 3 years. They were interested in tons of dog food sold. The owner of the company said, look, we sell 30,000 tons in Germany, we sell 40,000 tons in Finland, we only sell 3,000 tons in the UK, and that's the biggest market in Europe. We want you to be up at that level. And they are willing to work with us to get to that level. And for me, that's what's important. I'm a product person at heart, so they're going to work with us to make loads of new products. They're going to help fund the growth of those products and the growth of the company. And it gets me to do what I want to do. I'm good at growth. I'm good at making new products. I'm good at marketing new products. And actually, if I'd gone with one of the VC funds, I end up, spending most of my time reporting to a board. I spend most of my time looking at finance, and that's not what I want to be doing. So I think that's one of the really key things, was working on kind of the alignment between the people putting the money in and what I wanted to do. I prioritize my quality of life and my staff's quality of life over and above everything else. And I wanted, people that they could work with well, people that I could work with well. And touch wood, that's what we got so far. So now we're in a position where we've got cash in the bank, we're growing, we've got a parent company that's supporting us. I've got time to do things like this because I've got a really good team working for me, and the future's looking pretty bright, even in Corona days. So that's the journey. I hope it's warts and all and wasn't too waffly. I hope it was helpful. And yeah, there's a long way to go from here, but I'll come back and do that in a couple of years, give you the update. Or you can do some questions.
Guy, that's amazing. Thank you very much. What a story, and it's really is warts and all, and it's so useful to hear. For everyone to hear. You're going through a journey of quite a few years before you're suddenly realizing that there's, the way that you're looking at financial plans or your budgeting is something that you deem was entirely wrong. The reason I say that is that so many people go through business just thinking, am I the only one who's feeling like this, or am I the only one who's not?
I think the big problem as well is you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And you can't, I remember going to FDs and saying, I think I need your help, but I can't ask you what I need help for. I just know our finances aren't great, but I don't know what great looks like. So it's always really useful to find people who know what great looks like, because you can't ask the questions if you don't know what you're asking.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there are so many key points in there that it was great also seeing people scribbling away at real life lessons and some of the quotes as well, where I can see people nodding now that, that incredibly useful. Just there were a couple of questions asked beforehand that were put to us, but at this point, has anyone got any, whilst it's all fresh in minds, has anyone got any questions they'd like to ask, Guy?
I've got one.
Okay.
Alex, thanks.
You mentioned very early on you were able to get meetings with Pets at Home and Waitrose. How did you manage to get them to meet with you? At that stage, to them, you were probably just a mad inventor, one among many.
No, do you know what? This is really interesting. So my uncle is in the music industry, and he's quite in a Jewish network music industry. And whenever I tell him that we've got a listing somewhere, he's like, well, who did you know? Who did you meet? How did you get in there? And we didn't know anyone. I mean, some of them, like Pets at Home, actually do, and a lot of retailers will do an innovation day.
Okay.
Where you can go in, and Sainsbury's have got a thing called Future Brands at the moment, which is where they've got a team that look after small brands coming through. So a lot of it is kind of researching and knowing who are the right people to speak to. But actually, the bigger thing, I think, is understanding who your buyer is and what you want. I've got a massive bugbear against things like Dragon's Den for many reasons, which you'll need about 10 hours for me to go into my issues with Dragon's Den. But they say, oh, we'll get you connected with Waitrose, or and for some reason people think that because Peter Jones can sell a barbecue sauce in Sainsbury's, he can sell a pet food in Sainsbury's. And the pet food buyer doesn't want to hear from his boss via Peter Jones, via someone else.
Yeah.
They want someone to come to them that says, I understand what you do, I understand what your job is, I understand what you're looking for, and I've got a product that can help you do it. Mm-hmm. My wife was consulting for a company that was trying to sell, baby cutlery into a few stores like Jojo, Bébé Maman. And she showed me this really long email that they wrote, and she was like, what do you think this email I've written to help them get sales in there? And it was all about how great the product is. It's all about this, all about this, all about this. And I said, will you let me do it? And will you do what I tell you to? And she said, yeah. I wrote a one-line email and said, hi, please could you let me know what your next range review date is and what kind of products you're looking for? And that was it. And then they came back and they said, we're reviewing the range on this date. These are the kind of products that we're looking for. And with that information, you can then go back to them at the right time with the offer, which is what they're looking for, and show them what they want. And it shows that you're willing to work with them. And I do talks to people doing, trying to work with supermarkets and stuff at early stages. It's like your job isn't to sell to them. Your job is to make their job easy. And if you can make their job easier, it's really easy. You don't hassle people. You're just like, here, I'm going to make your life easy. And who doesn't want that?
Thank you.
Has anyone else got a question at this stage? We did get someone else asking questions about the actual back to the marketing, the product. Two questions that came in. One about the relative weight of marketing versus the product's intrinsic quality to achieve the success. What are your thoughts on that?
I'll give you kind of two versions of one answer. The first answer is marketing only gets you one sale, which means that if you're a big company with a huge marketing budget, you can afford to disappoint the customer because you have enough budget to get more customers who are then going to be disappointed. If you're a small company with a small budget, that customer who has seen your marketing and has tried your product, the product has to be good enough that they are then going to buy it multiple times and they are going to recommend it to their friends. And then you get a much better ROI on the marketing in the first place. That's my answer. Now, another answer from a guy called Paul Linley, who's the founder of Ella's Kitchen, who told me over lunch, is that you always look at your marketing as a ripple on a pond. And the best bit of your marketing is your product. The second best bit is the package that holds your product. The third bit is the shelf that the product's on. The fourth bit is the store that the product's on. And it goes out and out and out. And eventually you'll get to like a TV ad and a bus side. But most people think that the TV ad and the bus side is the best marketing, and they waste all of their money on that. And it's a total waste of time. So they all go back to the simple premise that if your product's not good enough, there's no point in marketing it.
Good. Good answer. I'm sure. Yeah, I can't remember who that question came in from. Just from myself, I know we were just going to keep within an hour, so do raise a hand if anyone else has got a question. But almost in summary, you've had such a journey. What two prong question? Knowing what you know now from your journey, what one thing would have you have done differently, or what's the biggest lesson that you've learned from it? Two sort of similar.
Many lessons, but I think the best. You'll like this, Ben, because of your brother, but I know Ben's brother very well. One of the best things I did, and one book I tell everybody to read, is a book called The Ancient Art of Stoic Joy by William B. Irvin. And I've written a blog post on my blog that I keep mentioning about the 7 books that every entrepreneur should read. Out of them are ones which are kind of your typical business books, but 2 on there are William Irvin's book on Stoic philosophy, and Alan Watts, who is a philosopher, called The Book. And you've got to realize that, I mean, from Alan Watts' perspective, life is just a game. And from the Stoics or Alan Watts, it doesn't matter how much money you have. It doesn't matter how successful your business is. You want to be happy in life, and you want to keep things happy in life. And understanding kind of I teach all of my staff about, the Stoic concept of control and understanding what's in your control, what's beyond your control, only working what's in your control. And that helps you just, not get obsessed and burn out and take it all, all too seriously. And to realize that, if your business goes bust and everything goes wrong, if you've got your health, you've got your family, you've got people around you that you care about, that's way more important than anything. So that's the biggest lesson. We're moving our company to fully remote. I want all my staff to be happy. I pay for them to have gym membership. I pay for them to have health insurance. I go to the gym every day. I get out. We have flexible working. Like, life is not work, and keep it that way.
I love that lesson. We gotta all apply that one. Just one last question from Max.
Max got his hand up. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Hi, I typed the question as well. Just to see. Thanks a lot, Guy. First of all, really love to hear your story. And you mentioned your blog quite a few times. And obviously, I just went on and had a little browse. Lots of good articles on there. But I wonder, this must take some time of yours as well. So when did you kind of start deciding to write a blog, and how much time do you invest in it? And what do you see? Like, why do you think it's an activity worthwhile alongside your business development activities?
Okay, it's a very long one, right? So I started writing years ago, but it was very, very sporadic. I started doing bits of mentoring and coaching, kind of in the last year or so, and I noticed that I was repeating what I was saying to a lot of people a lot of the time, and it was just more useful to have it written down in one place for people to look at. So that was part of it. Equally, I spent a lot of last year, and you can go by my talk, a lot of the time that I have worked on my business, I've worked on the business, kind of not in the business. And I've been working, raising money and securing the strategy going forward. And actually, I've done that to a great extent now, and the plans are done for the next 2 years. And I kind of have some time to do it. And I quite like doing it. And it's quite good for I get my team to read it so they understand where I'm coming from. I kind of want to write a philosophy book one day, and I want to practice writing. And I think so. It's just a way to practice writing. I get like 100 odd views for each post, and I do it. My thing now. The reason I do this talk, the reason I write the book, I'll write the posts and stuff, is I've been helped by a few people on my journey, and I want to help other people, and I quite like doing it. It's probably, if I looked at it on an ROI perspective of like getting new coaching customers, I've only mentored 3 companies, and how many of my staff actually read it and actually like build in what they've read, the ROI is probably awful, but I quite like doing it.
Thank you. That's very helpful, especially from my perspective. I find writing very challenging, to be honest.
I don't do it though, honestly. Weirdly, so I was at a networking thing, and I was talking to someone, and I think I'd just done a talk, and somebody said to me, "Oh, well, there was a psychologist," and said, "Well, you're a typical introvert." And I was like, "What? Why are you saying I'm a typical introvert? I've just gone up on stage and done a talk for 300 people." And they were like, "Yeah, I bet you'll feel happy doing that, but you don't feel comfortable doing it kind of at a dining table in front of 12 people networking like individually." And I was like, "Oh yeah, you're right. I don't really." And my characteristics are, as a kind of an introvert, I'm quite happy to do talks to people more than networking, and I find the written word quite easy. I'm quite comfortable with writing, whereas a lot of people won't be, and will find a podcast better or a video better. Like I tried to do my team made me do some video content the other day for our Instagram, and I hate doing that compared to writing. But there's a million ways to communicate. My wife's got a podcast, and she does all the IGTV thing as holding up your camera and chatting to the camera. And I tried to do it and I couldn't do it, but it works for her. And I think that the lucky thing that we've all got now is there are hundreds of different ways to communicate, with different people, whether that's a video blog, whether that's Clubhouse, whether that's short form on Twitter or long form on a blog. Just find the one that you're comfortable with, because you'll do it better. Even if it's got less reach, you'll do it better and you'll be better at it.
Thank you.
Personally, for a takeaway, it seems like there's been some of the really key points have involved when you've managed to get help and advice from somewhere else, which then talked about early on the mentors in essence, and then later on, obviously, at the Cranfield Business School. It just seems that, at key points in your journey, it has involved when you've almost not relinquished control, but just said, I need help, and I've taken in that help or advice, or having mentors in place, or the non-exec more recently. That's something that I've definitely take away, and I know lots of people, at IdeaSpace as well. It's about sharing of the knowledge and ideas, and getting other people's experience and expertise as well.
Yeah, I could end with a Socrates quote of,
that'd be perfect.
He is wisest who knows that he does not know. And all about, people who think they know everything are always going to screw it up. Find people who know more than you. So I met someone the other day, and he said, the guy who runs Delicious Ella, and he said, my goal is always to be the stupidest person in the room, which I didn't like, but I see where he's coming from. It's worked.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much on behalf of all of us, and likewise people subsequently listening to this. It's really appreciated your time, and we'd love to have you back in a couple of years, couple of months or years, or depending on how the journey continues.
Well, I'm officially a free man from April 23. I'm unemployed.
So. Okay, we'll catch you then and get part two of the journey.
Part two. Cool. Thanks very much.
Thanks so much. Really appreciated.
For more information or any inquiries about joining IdeaSpace, please contact us via ideaspace.cam.ac.uk or via any of our social media channels. For more information or any inquiries about joining IdeaSpace, please contact us via ideaspace.cam.ac.uk or via any of our social media channels.